Hey, welcome back to the GSTL. And right now, StarTale is up 1-0. Genius is the player AZUBU decided to send out for Protoss vs. Zerg.
Yeah, very interesting choice here. And this is going to be quite the intense match. Curious, of course, already showed his ZVZ skills, but now he has a chance to shine in the Zerg vs. Protoss.
Yeah.
Genius, on the other hand, didn't have too many games yet in Heart of the Swarm versus Zerg. Only one against Lucky, and that one he lost.
Well, the map he's chosen is Akalon Wastes, so getting that map out of the way right away here, which gives Zerg players a chance to play on it a little bit later for AZUBU if they want to choose Zerg players. And Genius is a player who's shown really innovative play in Wings of Liberty, and Curious in Wings of Liberty as well, known for this matchup, but this is a totally different game now.
With Genius, you never know. He might go Void Ray, he might go Phoenix, or he might go Oracle, but you never know which one it's going to be.
He might even forgate you occasionally with the Nexus cancel.
Genius was treated in the past, as we mentioned several times, for his Void Ray addiction, and it kind of worked. Occasionally we see Phoenixes and Oracles these days, but it's definitely still his go-to though.
Yeah. You know, the more Stargates he ends up having on the map, sometimes he just can't help himself and ends up making those Void Rays in the late game.
And it turns out that they're actually really good, especially against Zerg and Heart of the Swarm.
Yeah. The problem is it's really hard to counter Void Rays as a Zerg player. The only unit that really does a great job against them is the Queen. You know, if you think, you know, if you're a newer player, you think, well, Corruptor's a good anti-air unit, not against Void Rays.
Yeah, you learn that really fast. Like, that's a mistake you make only once. Unless you have the superior numbers by a huge margin, Corruptors are definitely not the weapon of choice when you're going up against a lot of Void Rays. Queens are really strong. You can play them in combination with Hydralisk. That works quite well. And what's also pretty cool is if you are able to get a couple of Infestors out there for maybe Chain Fungals.
Yeah, exactly. Really important to have Chain Fungals on your side. And the Queen's Transfuses, working wonders, and obviously the Queen's not an armored unit, so has a lot of hit points, can tank the Void Ray shots.
Well, whatever Genius is going to do on a small map like this, there are of course also a couple of gateway attacks that you can execute against the Zerg player. It's a two-player map, and therefore Curious will most likely scout very early what he's up against. If there's going to be a Forge opening, if we have maybe even an Nexus first, which is a little bit unlikely on a like very small map like this, or just a gateway opening, which is of course also a possibility.
I think we will probably see a gateway opening from Genius. That's kind of his style, to get his tech out as soon as possible, be aggressive. But he also has gone for Stargate play after Nexus First quite a lot as well. But a lot of fans come to the studio to check out the playoffs. If you are in Seoul, please come down and watch.
Slowly and steadily, people are trickling in here. As mentioned before, the weather is really, really bad these days in Korea, so a lot of people just prefer to stay at home and watch those games on stream. It's raining like crazy the past few days. Genius there, breathing deeply.
Yep. Genius is not one to get stressed out or nervous. Very playful player. Played against his teammate DRG in a finals. Did not get shaken at all. Ended up losing the finals, but he didn't look nervous.
Yeah, and we are going into the game right now, guys. This is game number 2 of the GSTL playoffs. We are going into a kill on waste. Zerg versus Protoss. Genius up against Boom Boom. Brought to you by Colin Wolf. Starting to the bottom right of the map, we have the Protoss player, the second player for Team AZUBU. This is Plan B. This is
AZUBU Genius.
Piling on the low ground. We'll be doing a Forge-oriented expand.
Yeah, going for the Forge expand here. Very old school build that was around in Wings of Liberty for a long time. Naniwa with the famous quote, Forge
fast expander,
Forge expand or die trying.
Yep.
Yeah, screwed that up.
His opponent here, the player who won the first match, he is
StarTale, Curious.
But yeah, that is a famous quote. And, you know, very much so, get rich or die trying with Forge Fast when you can get rich. AZUBU to the top.
Well, let's find out if they can pull that one off. Currently, they are down 1 game. We have the scout in the main base immediately with the probe. And I already mentioned earlier that Genius didn't really play too many offline matches against Heart of the Swarm. He only played one, and that was the match against Lucky, and he actually lost it. Whereas, on the other hand, Curious has his fair share of maps so far played against Protoss in Heart of the Swarm. We have him, the match history, of course, here showing matches that were played in Wings of Liberty. They faced each other several times, and Curious won all of these games. This is Heart of the Swarm, a little bit of a different game now. but still, there is a bit of history between the two players. But as I mentioned, 11 maps played by Curious, so he won 45% of them. Not the best ratio here, but still a little better than his opponent.
Yeah, he's won 11 times more than Genius has in the offline matches this expansion. Well, it's Nexus first here into Forge, not the Forge first. And the Probe just trying to be annoying. He cannot actually block with a pylon because he lost too many hit points there.
If you're confused why the why the win ratios on screen are different from what I just told you, this includes all the games that these players have been playing. Not only Heart of the Swarm, but also Wings of Liberty. Doesn't really say a whole lot. It's kind of interesting if you're a bit of a number nut, I guess. But if you're only focusing on Heart of the Swarm, which is the game that we are playing here, then what I said earlier applies.
It's kind of like an accomplishment reel for their entire career here in GSL and GSTL. But, you know, not so much relevant for Heart of the Swarm. The Probe here wants to see the third base that the drone is coming out, but he gets chased away too soon, so Genius doesn't know just yet that there's a third coming. He can expect that, though.
Oh, and that's a really, really early third base that we have early. Well, it's actually at the 4-minute mark already, so that's what you try to do when you're up against a build like this. So let's see what exactly he can accomplish with that. So far, for Genius, on the other hand, we have still the wall at the front. He's trying to pull that one off, and as you can see, the Overlord is still in the vicinity. He's scouting everything that's going on there. You want to know exactly what's happening. When will we see the upgrade in the Forge? Are we going to see maybe a robotics even before that? What kind of pattern does the Protoss player choose to start his opening, and especially his tech? And you want to see if what kind of tech there is. With Genius, you always assume there's going to be a Stargate, but you want to be safe.
You want to be safe. And Genius has also in the past done risky, fast third bases. So that's something he wants to check for as well. As Overlord's positioned right over that third, he's going to use it to fly into the main base on the other hand, though. And check for that very important tech you talked about. As the Cybernetics core is getting very close to completion, he wants to be able to see it. And if it's not going to be scouted, you know, if the Stalkers can come and chase the Overlord away, at least he can delay the tech that much by having the Overlord presence.
Warp Gate research has been started, and in just a few seconds we should see the tech choice for Genius here. Curious, on the other hand, he's usually a very careful player that doesn't mind just playing a double of crawlers out there, because he knows that he needs to be... It's better just to invest a few minerals than being completely blindsided and losing too many of them.
Yeah, as they say, better safe than sorry.
Yep.
And it looks like he's going to check for the Overlord scout at the third base. He's not going to find it. He sees it now in the main base. So, with the rocks being attacked this early, it absolutely could be a fast third, because he also hasn't added tech. Making that sentry here is indicative that if he is going to make tech, of course, it's going to be delayed, but he could definitely still just take a fast third here.
Yeah, he's really trying to just shut scouting down as much as he can. And this delays his tech a lot, and you're perfectly right. This could also indicate that he just wants to get a very early third base on.
And he sends the Probe to do it.
Yeah. So he's going to get that third base and is trying that right away. And Aquilon is a very good map for that. You can get the third base early, and we've seen so many annoying builds by Protoss players who just try to turtle on those 3 bases with a lot of cannons and an additional wall with buildings, and then go on to get those Stargates out and go into Void Rays and Tempest.
But the Lings here, the rocks are being attacked by the cannon. The Lings could actually just run in, and he goes through. The sentry also does not force field. Really weird that he doesn't commit with the Lings. He could have gotten so much more information there.
I think at this point he already saw what's going on. I mean, he saw the rocks being attacked, so he immediately said, okay, like, there's no way that you're getting tech. You're actually just trying to go for an expand, and that's immediately why he pulled out, because he knew that there are units in the main base, so the Lings would have been lost. He just wanted to confirm that there is a third.
Yeah. So...
But now we have suddenly 5 gates coming up.
He could... You know, there's a lot of different things he can do with this. He can just use these gateways to make sure he can secure his third and also pressure his opponent's third. He could cancel the Nexus, use all those resources for an attack. I don't think that's what we're going to see, since he has all 4 gases being mined from fully. But his Nexus has been scouted, so he has to live with that, unfortunately for him. He would have liked to keep it unknown. That's why he chased the Overlord so carefully. And Curious just had a really good sense of what was going on. He saw no tech at the natural. He checked the main base thoroughly with his Overlord, and he was like, you know what, I just got to check this. You're attacking the rocks. It would make sense that you have a third base here. And Genius not going to cancel it, going to go through with this.
The lead tech is now nearly completed, and so far for Curious things are going quite well, but he can't really do anything against that third base. So now we have the Twilight Council coming up. I would not been surprised if he would have tried to pull a bit of a deer here and gone into double Stargate behind this and trying to just get those Void Rays out, the Tempests out later on, and then going into Storm. But he apparently has other plans. With all the gateways that he has a very aggressive strategy, or at least in a bit of a timing. The Zerglings already spotting this, and therefore, for Curious, we immediately have Zerglings and also Roaches on the production tab.
As soon as his army is spotted, he cancels the 4th Curious, that is, and he starts a Hydralisk Den. Now, what Genius is going to try to do here is force an army and then run away so there's less drones, and then he's probably going to do a follow-up attack with Blink and +2. He'll also have an Observer with this. Here, he's kind of trapped. He will probably just recall because there's nowhere to run. He can use the force fields to fight a little bit until the energy is out, then he'll recall back.
Yeah, with the recall, of course, as a Protoss, you can now poke so much more in Heart of the Swarm. And here come the Lings, just trying to have a quick look there. But all the time that Genius is now using to just take down those rocks, attack them. We have more Hydralisks coming into play. The big deal here really being that the 4th base is so much delayed. Yeah,
the 4th base is really delayed. Genius is trying to force a lot of units here, and all the while he's still making probes at home. He's still transitioning at home. And the more Hydras are made, he's just going to make a robotic support bay. And he wants to just force it off here, kill all these Lings for free, and then recall. Make sure he doesn't lose too many of his army units.
For Curious, this is really annoying. He wants to get rid of this army so that he can get his 4th base up, but it's a really good spot for Genius to be in. At any time, he could just simply recall back into his base if he needs to, but for now, he's doing a decent job. I have no clue what those dogs think they are doing here.
I think this is just a Bis rally.
He already...
Oh, no, he recalled, and I think these units didn't get caught with the recall, so they must have been, like, splinched, essentially, I guess, there.
Yeah, but it still doesn't make any sense, because they walked all around the rocks, so a simple right-click to the bottom right would have solved that problem. They worked all the way through the rocks and then up the ramp, so I'm not quite sure what exactly happened there.
Yeah, definitely a waste.
Yeah, he lost way too much, and he apparently didn't even realize. I mean, there were like 4 Stalkers that were taken out, and even a Zealot, so he could at least try to save 1 or 2 of those.
Yeah. Bit of a mistake here, but as it is, Blink, +2, Robotics Bay, Genius, a really strong economy, and he's delayed the 4th base so much, and this Overseer needs to get out. Will actually escape, it looks like. Genius can now also consider taking his 4th base when his first Colossus or so comes out, because then he'll have an army that he knows he can defend. The problem for him is going to become Vipers potentially here with the Hive finishing up.
Super fast Hive. This is exactly what you can do as a Zerg player. If you go into that style of play, you can go for the extra fast Hive, then you have the Vipers on the map. You have access to the 3/3 upgrades. It's going to kind of make you play a little bit later on, since we now just have the first attack upgrade being started. But Vipers alone are just so good. You can always yank those Colossi in the range of the Hydralisk, and this suddenly makes Hydralisk much more viable in the game. It's not only about the speed upgrade that we have since Heart of the Swarm, but the Vipers, as an addition to the army, they can do so much as long as there are no high temples on them.
The biggest problem for Hydras and Wings of Liberty was that they could never close the distance on the Colossi because they were too slow, and the Colossi just had so much range. But now you can eliminate that by just literally pulling the Colossus into your army. He has 3 Vipers on the way now. Don't forget, he only has +1 for his Hydras. Finishing up just now is +2 finishes for Genius, so the Hydra's not very heavily upgraded here. And, you know, at this point, Curious turns around. He wants to wait for his Vipers. He's going to use that consumability to get some energy on them. I like this delay of the 3rd base, just putting that Overlord, or rather the Ling there.
You know, I actually would have loved to see a double Stargate here, to be completely honest with you. It's a build that fell a bit off the grid. It was very strong at the beginning, but it's something that you can still make work, and it's still very, very, very strong. So if you play that right, as Dia played it at the beginning, where you also add your High Templars later on for the Storm, and you have a couple of Colossi, have the Tempest as well, you can easily get your 4 bases and just move in. And I feel that would have really worked well for Genius, especially considering how fond he is of his Void Ray play.
Yeah, you have to consider he's a recovering Void Ray holic, so he's just trying to avoid it as much as possible.
I guess. It's too much temptation, I feel.
Exactly. I think he may add this later, depending on how long the game goes. He's really looking like he wants to gear up to do a strong push here. He's getting charged, his +3's in the lineup with his Warp Prism. He still does not have an Observer at all, so he can't get that 4th Nexus.
And to be quite frank with you, I do not see an attack happening, because I think he's going to get the 4th base and he's going to play a little bit more defensive and just trying to get his additional attack and his upgrades out. Because he cannot afford to attack. With a Warp Prism he can harass a little bit, but I feel as soon as he sees that Spinecrawler wall, and also that we will see a Swarm Hosts here, I feel he has to change it up. We have a 200 supply Zerg player, so it's not like he can go into Swarm Hosts right away, but that's what he's preparing for, and Swarm Hosts are a great choice for a map like Akilon. But with all those Spinecrawlers and with the Spores in the middle of the map, I feel when Genius sees this, he either has to find a way around them or something else, but he cannot possibly attack into them.
Yeah, there are 5 Vipers too, so he doesn't have any Corruptors for the Colossi, but he's not going to need them.
There we go.
Good abducts, and here we go. Already one Colossus down, the second one falls almost instantly as well.
Yeah, and he just moves back. There are no force fields, no nothing. We don't have any high Templars for the feedback. And this is the time when Genius should be like, okay, well, I guess I have to move back and get my 4th up right now, because that's not going to happen anytime soon.
He has to worry about this run by 2. There's only one Stalker warp, then he's losing units actually at the front.
Main base with a warp in on the warp prison, but not being used just yet, and those Jones having a hard time here.
Yeah, he never blinked back. A little bit strange, and he needs to actually focus these units. He's worried about the Zealots going into the 3rd base, but he loses a lot here.
Gets so angry that at first he actually attacks his own simulator.
Yeah. Kills the Spinecrawler here, but nothing else going to get done. And it's instantly replaced by Curious, who also has a 2nd Spine.
I like the choice of Genius to go into hallucinated Colossi so that he has a chance of saving at least a few of those. But now we have Curious with the mix. He's going into a lot more Swarm Hosts than he had earlier. We have him even with the Fungal being started. He's going into the Spire so that he can later on add a couple of Broodlords. So in terms of tech, Curious is doing an amazing job. I would like to see another base for him. Would like him to see into to go into base number 5 actually at this point.
Yeah.
But in general, his tech choice here is a good one. And I cannot believe that we don't see the Templar Archive just yet for Genius. I feel that's something that he desperately needs in this game.
Absolutely. It's going to be great against the Vipers, against potentially Queens later on, and very importantly against the Locust as well. He can buy so much time with some good storms. He's really going to consider engaging this army. If he can avoid the Locust and maybe catch this army before he gets back to the Spines, then he can engage, but I don't think Curious is going to allow that to happen. He's just going to make sure he stays on creep and keeps Genius's army zoned out.
Double upgrades by now for Curious, so he's starting those upgrades. He was focusing on tech a lot more. This is like the strength of the strategy. You get your tech out very, very, very fast, but the upgrades are delayed because of it. But you add them later on. And with such a defensive play as we see from Curious right now, he should be able to get those upgrades out.
This is the style that we were talking about in Wings of Liberty. You saw from Curious, very strong late game. Spinecrawler walls, Spore Crawlers, and then the Heart of the Swarm, of course, you can use the Locusts as well, as you see here. And he's very patient, but here comes a blink. He's going to try to pick off the Vipers. He does not get any of them. Yeah,
that was a good Blinding Cloud that we had used there. Mothership Core is immediately down, and he can actually grab another couple of Stalkers if he wants to. Doesn't really think it's worth the money. Warp Prism also goes down here in the main base. But Curious is doing a great job. Genius, on the other hand, now adding the Templar Archive that I was mentioning earlier. He really needs that tech path.
Yeah. We are now in a kind of a war of compositions. Right now the bank for Curious is getting a little bit higher, but there's still a good bank for Genius, who goes for the engage here. He pulls the Colossi in, but there's nothing to finish them off.
That was awesome. That blink forward was crazy good. That was exactly the right choice here. The Blinding Clouds were brilliant, but then Genius is just going for it. Blinks forward. There are no Spinecrawlers in range, and he takes down that small army. Once again, the Viper is on the prowl here, trying to go for another abduct, and there it is in the middle of the Spinecrawlers. That Colossi is definitely lost.
Yeah, you know, he saves it barely, but it wasn't doing any DPS. 13 Corruptors on the way, though, as the Stalker count starts to thin a little bit. But this is actually looking really strong here. He does not have... There's the Observer.
Yeah, he's on top of those Swarm Hosts now, and the Observer, well, he's giving the vision that he needs, but all those Locusts are moving in and taking down Stalker after Stalker. The Swarm Host will eventually die, but Curious is taking so many Protoss units with him.
Yeah, Curious is going to get this Warp Prism as well as the Colossus here. But there's so many Corruptors, they're not actually useful against the ground army anymore. This gives Genius a chance to escape.
Yeah, he can at least run away with what he still has, but he's already down 60 supply.
He lost his bank, and he's got a lot of gas he can use for Templar, but whoa, it looks like he lost a lot of probes over there. Wow, he lost
27.
Yeah, 16 probes lost at that particular base. He was at 66 before the fight.
And right now, if you look at it, we still have a bank for Curious. He has his tech out. He's going into the Greater Spire. He's starting his own air upgrade, so he has a double Spire actually here. And we have him with a +3 attack upgrade nearly done. So Genius is just being forced back again, and we are still 4 base against 3 base in favor of Curious, who could still take his 5th without a problem at all, since he has that massive bank.
And that's the problem for Genius, is he doesn't have the additional base that he needed, which means it's going to be impossible for him to transition into a composition to defeat the Broodlords that are coming, because the Greater Spire is more than halfway done. Doesn't have Void Rays for that, doesn't have Tempest for that, doesn't really have a large Blink Stalker army. He's really struggling to remax. He needs a 4th Nexus, but very soon Curious is going to start sieging up with those Swarm Hosts that he has, with those Broodlords.
Yeah. Swarmos and Broodlords are working so well together, and Genius is just struggling at this a little bit. The moves that he pulled off in the last fight were decent, but it was just, he lost too much. He sacrificed too many units to achieve that goal, and now we have that 5th base that I was pointing out earlier. Curious is getting it now at the bottom left.
He should make like 8 Broodlords as soon as that Greater Spire is done.
He will. That's why he has the bank. That's why he didn't max out again. He's just waiting for it. And
he makes even 11. He's going full Broodlord here, and I don't blame him for it. But Genius tries to come in here while they're morphing, and you know, maybe he could get through. It's going to be close. The Broodlords are only halfway done. He blinks in. He's targeting
the army. There they go. We have Infestors. Everything is moving in, but as you said, there's a huge bubble, and the blink forward is strong.
And the Archons, he has to cancel. Oh my God! Is Genius actually going to come back in this game? I don't believe it.
Genius is apparently going to take this. There's no way for those Corruptors being walked into Broodlords right now. He just doesn't have it. He's trying to pull it up, but he's building 33 roads instead.
The Greater Spire is done.
Genius with the perfect timing.
The perfect timing indeed here. He's doing so much damage. The Broodlords may save Curious's life here, but he's lost so much the second Spire will go down as well, and this will give Genius a lot of time. Is he going to go into the main base? He goes right in here. Those 6 Broodlords are exposed once more.
Even with 6 Broodlords, he's not going to make that happen against the Blink Stalkers that we have and the Archons backing them up. This is really grim right now. The Spine Crawlers are saving grace from Curious at this point, but his main base is completely exposed. His army is split in half, and Curious is suddenly on the ropes. Seconds ago, he looked like the sure winner in this match.
Yeah. He certainly did. The Broodlord's in a good position here. It's going to be hard for Genius to blink under, but he could bait them out. Going to the left side here. Some infested Terrans desperately. He's going to blink under. There's a few roaches to help, but with good targeting, it won't matter.
Here comes the blink. The fungal is good, but a little bit too late. Those roaches on the ground supporting the Broodlords as best as they can, but the focus for Genius is good, taking out everything here.
Yeah, this is the end for Curious. I feel he's losing all of his expensive units. He lost his tech, his main base under siege. He's making Hydras because he can't make anything else, but these Hydras aren't going to do it.
Exactly, the Hydra list, they need something to back them up, and the composition that we have for Genius is just way too good. He has Immortals, he has Colossi, we have all those Archons at the front, and the Broodlords 10 seconds later, the attack a little bit later, and it would have been a completely different game.
GG. Genius's timing here is impeccable. That was insane. I mean,
I am actually very curious to, I did not see if he had a scout there that saw the Broodlords morphing or if he just got lucky. Because that is not a timing that you hit if you don't see the Broodlords morphing or the Greater Spire complete.
If I'm not mistaken, because I did see him send a hallucination scout, I think he saw with the hallucinated Phoenix the Broodlords morphing, and then he went for it.
And he knows that that was on a razor's edge. This was such a close game. I mean, Curious had everything there.
Yeah.
He had such a lead, he had the economy, he killed a lot of units earlier on, he had the tech. He had double Spire for the double upgrades, and then he was just looking at it, was like, okay, now it's time to move my Broodlords. He moved them at the front. Genius saw it, moved in at the exact time when he could have won the game, and he didn't.
Even if, you know, the army of Curious was underneath the Broodlords, maybe that could have bought him enough time, would have at least given him a better chance there. His army was a little bit to the side. Very, very crisp there. Like you said, 10 seconds later, and Genius probably would have lost the entire game. I mean, he had a weak economy. He did not have any Stargate tech to try to deal with the Broodlords.
If not for that last attack, he would have lost it for sure. The situation that we had was 11 Broodlords were morphing. We had a ground support for them. We had Infestors. So even if he blinks in, he's suddenly up against 11 Broodlords that have really good upgrades. The Fungals would have hit home. I don't think that those Archons would ever have been able to get close to that army. Yeah. And then your ground army just melts away, and you already run out of resources at home because you only have 3 bases. Your opponent has 4 and is going into a 5th. That was the only chance that Genius had. He identified it, and he took it.
Yeah, that was a great decision making by him there, you know. Seeing that chance, going for it. Very risky, but, you know, he had to put all the cards on the table because he had no backup plan. He couldn't transition his tech. He couldn't, you know, remax with Stalkers and try to deal with those Broodlords, not with the composition that Curious is building with all the Spine Crawlers.
A really, really strong game here that we just saw, and Curious, he loses it, so suddenly the series is tied, and StarTale has to come up with another player that goes up against Genius next.
Yeah, and Star Station is the map, so I could see another Zerg on Star Station.
Yeah, me too. I could actually see another Zerg player here.
You know,
either Zerg or Terran.
We could see even Life coming out early here. I wouldn't be surprised.
I think from a tactical point of view, you would usually send out a Terran player right now. We have a lot of good Terran players on the StarTale bench, so if you think about their Zerg lineup, it's not really that heavy.
It's
so
not as big.
you would want to save life a little bit for a little bit later, but I feel right now a Terran player would not be the worst choice here.
Would not be the worst
we
choice.
have good ones on our side.
Exactly. It would be surprising for me for the map, but besides that, it seems like it could make sense. I could see them choosing somebody like Hack here.
Hack, Sound, one of those guys. They are really strong, and they're a player that you can set out as the second one. I feel that Bomber, Life, that's players you want to send out a little bit later today.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll see what they have in mind. Bomber definitely not going to be the second player.
Well, he could be if they mix it up a lot, but from how they played in the past, it's him.
Oh, wow. What? It's really him.
As I just said, it could be him. Like, usually they send the strongest player out last, but if you think about it, if you send him out early, and Bomber is really on a roll these days, then he can get all those important wins, and then your team can just get the rest if he isn't able to pull it off.
Yeah.
But the Terran player, as expected, Bomber not really the choice that I thought they would pull off, just because in the history they tend to send their best players out a little bit late.
And don't forget, he's been preparing for a very, very difficult Terran versus Terran match. So, you know, he has to switch gears entirely in the course of one day.
I don't think that's a problem for him. Bomber is a really great all-around player, and that's exactly the skill set that you need in the all-kill format that we have here at the GSTL. So, a Terran player was a good choice, definitely, considering that they have so many Terrans on the roster that they might use today. It's Bomber now first, and that's actually going to be a really cool matchup.
Yeah, you can see AZUBU is really thinking about this hard right now, looking at the player sheet.
They
Because
didn't
this
expect
is,
it either.
they did not expect it, and now they're having to change their entire plan. So they're talking about this really, really, really hard right now. And that's why this choice is pretty cool. It's if they lose Bomber here, it's a huge blow. But that's probably not going to happen, and for them, it's really tricky and it's sneaky, and it's going to throw AZUBU off. As you can see, it's physically throwing them off right there.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, like, if you are AZUBU, you have at least one player prepared for Bomber. There's no way you don't prepare anyone for Bomber. I mean, he has to come out. He's the player that they have to bring today. So there's definitely at least one player, and maybe even two on the AZUBU bench, that was told right from the start, okay, listen, buddy, you prepare builds against Bomber.
One thing I really want to note about Star Station is, since this is still the GSTL, they're keeping the map the same. It's the GSL version of Star Station, which has all spawning locations possible, not just cross spawns. I know I mentioned this a lot, but they started using it, of course, the ladder edition on the Challenger League, so I don't want anyone to be confused who watch the Challenger League and is wondering why we switched back. The GSTL map pool only added 2 maps, did not change any of the additional, the existing maps. So Star Station, all spawns possible here.
Yeah. All spawns possible, so a lot of scouting going on in the early game, that much for sure. And Bomber here, definitely the strongest player that StarTale has these days. He surpassed Life, of course, since Life is in his mini slump right now. I don't think it's a full-fledged one just yet.
Yeah, I mean, we saw him play really well yesterday, so he's definitely not slumping as hard as some of the players we've seen in the past. There's Supernova.
That's gonna be. I'm really so curious to see what it is. You know, Supernova, actually, if you think about it, he prepared a lot for Terran versus Terran, but is that really the matchup where you want to face Bomber now after he just took down Flash?
Flash, yeah, with crazy awesome builds. Well, we'll see. You know, Bomber here, he has to win it first. He's up against Genius, a very unpredictable and hard to play against player. I expect to see some sort of aggression out of Genius, whether it's Mothership's core pressure, whether it's Oracle's. Don't think we'll see Void Rays, but, you know, it's Genius.
I'm very happy with the choice to see Bomber here. He's one of my favorite players in Korea. He is a hard worker. I appreciate that a lot in a player. And he's also someone who is just all around very, very good at this game. And for him, I could see him take several games here. AZUBU will have to make something happen to take him out. It's not going to be easy. This is definitely the player to beat today. We're going into the game right now, game number 3 at the GSTL playoff match. Number 1, it's StarTale versus AZUBU, Bomber versus Genius. Brought to you by Color.